Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya and welcome to TFR Let's Talk. Today we have with us once again Scott Sellers, co-founder and CEO of Azul. Scott, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Swap. Appreciate the time today, and thanks for having me on your show again.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And today's discussion is also going to be quite interesting because you folks recently came up with Oracle Java usage pricing and migration survey and report. So there are a lot to discuss. Before we go into the weeds of this report, let's just quickly remind our viewers what is Azul all about so they will be able to build the context between the discussion and what you folks do.
Azul is an enterprise software company that serves companies around the world in terms of helping them deploy Java-based applications, Java-based infrastructure in ways that are the most cost-effective, most secure, ultimately the most performance. And as you may know, Java continues to be, really everywhere within the enterprise. And so, we think we're in a fantastic business of being part of the Java community and ultimately helping enterprises run their Java applications and workloads as efficiently and effectively as possible.
You and I may know the widespread adoption and usage of Java, but some of the folks watching this may not. So can you just talk about in the modern world where we talk about cloud native, Gen AI, all those shiny objects, what is the market for Java?
Java, of course, is not only a programming language, it's also, you can think about it as a platform because, many other services like databases and caches and message queues and all these types of things that applications are built upon are also built upon Java. But at the end of the day, it's a way that programmers develop applications and the language that they develop applications in. And it's been around for quite some time, 25 plus years, I believe, and continues to really grow and thrive. The amount of Java used and its prevalence in the application development community continues to be incredibly high. We actually did a different survey last fall, which was just talking about the use of Java and the types of Java that's being used, etc. And one of the things that really stood out from that survey was that 98% of the respondents say that they use Java, within their companies and within their enterprises. So it really is quite prevalent. It's one of these things that, maybe at the highest level, you may not realize how applications are developed or, what kind of goes into building the application. But, the reality is at the heart of many, if not most, of applications developed in the enterprise actually are based on the Java platform. So it really is an important platform used in the enterprise, and the engine that runs it, which is called the Java runtime, the JVM, the JDK, they're all kind of interchangeable in terms of how people describe the software engine that runs it. It's a critical piece of software that really powers some incredibly important enterprise applications throughout the world today.
Will it be possible for you to give some examples of enterprise applications which are also critical and these are not legacy applications where folks are looking at replacement, but these are core part of modern businesses?
Java is used quite prevalently across every industry vertical that you could possibly imagine, and there's been obviously some very public talks and disclosures as to the use of Java, etc. Just to take one easy example is Netflix. Netflix has done a lot of talks about their architecture and how it's built and how it works, and that architecture is predominantly all Java, and obviously one of the most visible brands around the world. And Netflix has always been considered to be really a leader in terms of innovation from architecture of applications. And it's just one example of the types of applications that are developed using Java today. As you look around, the world's biggest retailers and e-tailers, typically those all the software that is used to run those businesses are based on Java. When you look at financial services, whether it's electronic trading, so every time you go to someone like a Schwab or a TD Ameritrade or a Bank of America, etc. Those trades are very likely based on a very sophisticated electronic trading set of applications and services that are largely based in Java. when you actually are visiting a website and you're getting personalization recommendations, and you're shopping, again, probably based in Java. So it's it's a very commonly used programming language and platform that really touches everyone's lives on a daily basis, even though you may not know that feature, that service, that application. Obviously you see the what it does, but you don't really see how it's built. But the reality is, more often than not, it's probably built on Java.
Now, can you talk about the report, the survey? What was the goal behind this report and survey?
One of the things that is happening in the Java community is that Java itself continues to thrive. That Java is developed in a very successful open source project that's called OpenJDK, and the members of the Java community, which consists of companies such as Azul and Oracle and Amazon and Microsoft and Google and IBM, Red Hat. So it really is a who's who, if you will, of the most important enterprise software companies in the world. We all collaborate together in an open community, in OpenJDK, in order to be able to continue to advance Java and improve its features, capabilities, performance, these types of things. And so all of Java is developed in the open source community. Where the Java runtime itself comes from, even though the source code is there, different vendors have different distributions of the Java runtime. And historically, because of Oracle's acquisition of Sun, the majority of that Java runtime was coming from Oracle. And what's happened over time is that because the license terms under which Oracle licenses the Oracle Java runtime, as well as how much they're charging for that, that has changed considerably over the course of time. And just as a point of fact, over the last 4 years, there's been 4 different changes to the licensing and or the pricing terms, how Oracle provides their Oracle Java runtime. So as a result of that, there's been a kind of an unsettled community of users of Oracle Java, and there actually has been a migration away from using Oracle as the predominant Java runtime and moving to others that are still based on the same source code coming from OpenJDK. So it's very straightforward to do these types of migrations because it's all coming from the same source code, right? But customers and enterprises are doing that for a variety of reasons that we can talk about. But the reason that we specifically did this survey is that, again, citing the data that we saw from the State of Java survey in 2023, about 98% of enterprises that were using Java. Other data that we have and others have publicly reported about is that not so long ago, 2020, over 70% of Java users of Oracle, of users of Java, building Java applications, etc., over 70% were using Oracle Java. Now that's below 40% and continuing to trend down. And so we wanted to study why that was the case, and what is going on in the Java community, and what are the decisions behind people moving away from Oracle Java. And we think it's important not only for the community to understand the experience that users are having in terms of migrating off Oracle Java, but also the reasons why and what's important for developers and DevOps teams when they make a decision to change, what's really underneath that change and what's driving that change. And so that was the origins of the survey, and to be able to learn from it, and obviously then educate the community on the findings.
We had this discussion in past, but just refresh memories of our viewers as well. Talk about the changes that Oracle is making to the pricing licensing, which is leading to this whole migration.
Absolutely, yeah. So that was one of the reasons that we, our suspicion as to why users of Oracle Java were moving to OpenJDK alternatives was price, and the reason was because in January of 2023, Oracle announced a significant change to how Oracle Java is priced. And historically, they charged Oracle Java for license and support based on the amount of Java that was used, right? Based on the number of desktops Java was installed on or the number of servers, etc. And the more Java that was used, the more that you would pay Oracle, and that's a very sensible way of charging. The more you use, the more you pay. It's pretty standard in software. January 2023, Oracle made quite a dramatic change, and instead of charging for the amount of Java an enterprise uses, they charge based on the number of employees that company has. And employees is actually a defined term. So it's capital E employees, and that includes not only regular full-time employees, but it also includes part-time contractors and agents. And so it's a very broad definition that they use to come up with a number. And then Oracle's pricing now for Oracle Java is based on the number of employees in an organization. The price increase that this has caused most enterprises has been quite dramatic. Gartner cited that for most organizations, they see between 2 to 5x increase in effective price now with the new pricing change. We see in our daily practice in this somewhere between 2 to 12x. We've seen even higher than that. So it really can be quite dramatic. And ultimately, it's really just not very sensible anymore because, if you have a 10,000 employee company A that maybe just has a couple applications that don't use a lot of Java, and another 10,000 company B that uses hundreds, thousands of Java applications and tens of thousands of servers, it doesn't make sense that those enterprises would actually pay Oracle the same amount simply to use Oracle Java. So it doesn't make sense to us. It doesn't make sense to the companies that we talk to that are asking about what they can do about it. And ultimately, again, the good news is there's excellent alternatives coming from the OpenJDK community.
Can you cite other reasons? But of course, there is a kind of uncertainty around the price change in future. Are there other concerns also that people also don't want to be locked into a proprietary? I mean, of course, Java is open source, but open source. What are the other factors which are also helping people look at alternatives?
There's no question cost is number one because the quality of the Oracle Java runtime, similar to the quality of other Java runtimes based on the same source code, OpenJDK, is not an issue of quality. It absolutely works. It's robust. It's used in all sorts of business critical applications around the globe. So it's not about the quality of software. And by the way, that's why Java continues to thrive and is used so prevalently, is because the software really does work. It's really, really resilient. It's scalable, all these types of things. So it's not about the quality. It's all about the cost, the uncertainty, and really the business practices, if you will, of Oracle. And that really came out in the survey, is that cost was the number one reason that people have decided to move. And the stats were actually pretty amazing. For the respondents, 86% of people reported that they already have moved or are planning to move from Oracle Java to an OpenJDK alternative. So that's a pretty compelling stat in terms of getting the vibe of the community. So when we then asked, for those that have moved or already are planning to move, the reasons why, cost came out. The majority of respondents said cost was the reason, but other reasons that came out, preference for open source was also highly cited. And I think the reasons there are not specific to Java. I think this is true of enterprise software in general, that all things being equal, enterprises do prefer open source. And the reason, all things being equal is an important statement, right? Because there may be proprietary solutions that simply are better than what you can get from open source. And of course, businesses typically are going to naturally find best in breed offerings and choose the best thing that makes sense for the business. But in this case, since Oracle's Java is no different than OpenJDK based distributions, all things are equal, and so then other factors come into play, and open source is a big part of that. The reason that open source is preferred is because it basically gets you away from being locked into a specific vendor. And enterprises hate being beholden to a single vendor, and that's not just Oracle. They don't want to be beholden to anyone. They don't want to be beholden to us. They don't want to be beholden to Amazon. They don't want to be beholden to any software vendor out there. And so usually with open source, that creates a level of choice. And that's certainly true in the case of Java runtime, where moving away from Oracle and Java means that there are plenty of OpenJDK distributions that are functionally the same, and that allows some flexibility of choice for those enterprises making that change. They can choose fully commercially supported builds of OpenJDK. That's we're in that business, and that's what we do for enterprises to make sure that there's full a company behind it and someone to call and guarantee updates and those types of things. But there's also a number of free distributions of OpenJDK, and many users that are moving off Oracle Java just move to free distributions. The Eclipse Foundation, for example, has a very good quality free distribution of OpenJDK. That's the project's called Adoptium, and many users use that. Amazon has a freely available OpenJDK distribution. We have one also that we just provide freely to the community. So that's a wonderful thing for the community, because if they suddenly wake up one morning and they're not happy with our distribution, they can go to Eclipse, or they can go to Amazon, or they can go to others. And so it really removes that vendor lock-in concern. And again, that's not just true for Java, it's true for generally in software. All things being equal, enterprises are going to choose open source.
First of all, thank you for explanation. I really appreciate that. You mentioned open source. Talk a bit about what is Azul doing with this whole open source. What is your contribution? How are you involved with the open source? Because when I was listening to you, it seems like that you really care about the ecosystem and the customers, and not worried about locking them even into the Azul's platform.
I think when you really look at success of software in general, in this day and age, oftentimes it's coming out of open source projects and open source business practices, and we're certainly one that believes in that. We think it's important that technologies that are used by developers and that we expect to be used by, I think the last number I saw, 12 million plus Java developers in the world. So it's a really important technology that's being used. And for those types of things, openness is super important, because we want the community to be able to participate in the evolution of the Java platform. OpenJDK, I think, arguably could be said is the most successful open source project in the world, given its history, given the fact that it's never splintered or fragmented. Many times what you see happening in open source projects is that it gets forked, and some companies pick some set of features and versions, and other companies pick others, and then that adds all sorts of confusion, because then you have different incompatible versions that are out there, etc. That's never happened with Java. And so you have a project that is a given version of Java is somewhere on the order of 10 million lines of code. So it's a very complex piece of software, but it's never veered off everyone in the community. When you say you are Java version 21, that means something very specifically. It means that not only are you adhering to the written specifications of what the Java 21 specification is, it also means that you've passed somewhere on the order of 150,000 compatibility tests, one by one, saying this Java runtime meets all the specifications of Java 21. And so that rigor that's been built in the OpenJDK community has really, I think, allowed Java to remain incredibly well regarded, obviously used prevalently throughout the enterprises, running the most important business applications, etc. So having all this together, when you have thousands of contributors involved together in an open source community, everyone can see the code, everyone can improve the code. It just creates a very healthy dynamic that ultimately benefits developers and benefits the enterprises that those developers are developing applications for.
And as you were mentioning that around 86% respondents are planning to move away from Oracle. How mature are the alternatives? Can you talk about the state of alternatives?
The specific stat that 86% is those that have already moved or are planning to move. And so it's, certainly many have already done it. The thing about Java that many people don't understand is that it does all come from the same open source code base. It comes from the OpenJDK project. And so usually when people hear that word migration, it causes them concern because, for example, if you were to undertake, say, a database migration, that is a very complex project that takes a lot of time and incurs risk because if you're moving from one database to another database, many times, or probably the majority of the time, there are incompatibilities that exist from database A to database B, and so moving the data is by no means a straightforward process. And so this migration word, kind of has a bad connotation associated with it because depending upon what you're migrating, it can be very straightforward or it can be quite complex. In the case of Java, since the Oracle Java runtime comes from the same code as our Java runtime and Amazon's and Eclipse's and everyone else that has an OpenJDK build, by really almost by definition, they should be the same because it's the same source code that ultimately is running. And so, just by proof, if you will, and of course there always are subtleties, but at the end of the day, the comfort level that we educate the community on and others in the OpenJDK community is that there should be no difference between the Oracle runtime and others coming from the OpenJDK community. And in practice, there is no difference. And that's why it's been so straightforward for users of the Oracle Java runtime to move to an OpenJDK distribution. So when Oracle, again, they build their distribution based on the same OpenJDK source base that we do and others, they also pass those same 150,000 compatibility tests that I mentioned before. They use those same tests to say this is Java 21, as I mentioned in that example, and just like we do. And so everyone's using the same set of tests, everyone's using the same source code. That's why, for example, Azul's OpenJDK builds is functionally, feature, performance-wise the same as Oracle's. And so that's why the migration actually is quite straightforward because it's literally installing a piece of software that's very simple to install and changing some configuration as to how the application chooses which Java runtime to use, and there you go. It really is quite straightforward. So usually migrations are more about how enterprises make changes to their overall application stack, how applications get deployed. It's really more IT processes that have to happen in terms of changing from Oracle Java to an OpenJDK alternative. But the survey also had some really impressive stats that 84% of those that have migrated from Oracle Java to an OpenJDK distribution have found that migration to either go as expected or easier than expected. So, the results are pretty clear that, what I'm saying is not just hypothetical. That's really what's happening in the world.
And as customers plan to migrate from Oracle Java to an OpenJDK distribution, how is the process? Because as you said, a lot of folks are already moving, so that means that things are already in place. But what does the process look like? How much work it requires, and how do companies like Azul help them as well? What they can expect? Do they lose anything, or it's just like a drop-in replacement? So I just want to understand the whole. What does migration look like?
Right. So, this kind of gets into the next level of detail in terms of, sort of the simple answer and then the more complex answer. When you really dive in to see what, all the different versions of Java that are being used within an enterprise, it ends up being quite a long list with any sort of, reasonably mature enterprises. And of course, many of the companies that we work with have been in the business for a long time, 50, 100 years. And so you can imagine a lot of applications have been built up and a lot of applications are continuing to be used. when you kind of peel the onion there and you start looking at, okay, exactly what Java version are you using and what subversion of that version are you using? So, for example, Java 8, which is still, even though it's now quite old, over 10 years old, it's still very commonly used. And I think that the latest release of Java 8 is something like 380 some odd. So there's a lot of sub releases within those releases. And when an organization is moving from Oracle Java to something like an OpenJDK distribution, what we found in terms of best practice is the first thing you should do is do a like for like change. So even if you're running a version of Java or a sub release, a subversion of that release that is out of date, that's the first thing you should do is just move from Oracle to OpenJDK, but don't try to up level to a newer version of Java. Don't try to up level to a newer upgrade of that given version. Do a like for like first. And that's where vendors like Azul really come into play, because if you just look at the freely available versions of OpenJDK out there from Amazon or Eclipse or what have you, there is not necessarily a direct like for like for each and every Oracle release. In the case of Azul, and this is kind of the business that we're in, for those that are paying us for commercial support, we provide every single one of those like for like releases. And so again, that allows us to have a very straightforward migration for our customers. In terms of what to expect, it really, can be quite straightforward. We've had customers of ours that have migrated thousands of servers literally, over a weekend. And so it can be a very straightforward process. And, typically enterprises are going to be conservative and they're going to want to phase that migration over some period of time. But even the survey showed that 75% of organizations that have done the migration did it in under a year, which by enterprise time is actually quite fast.
I also want to know that, of course, Oracle will also see this report. How do you, of course, I cannot put you in a position to respond on Oracle's behalf, but how are you seeing, what does it mean for Oracle with the shrinking user base? What is the impact on their revenue? And do you see them react or respond to these developments in their ecosystem?
Well, I think Oracle clearly remains incredibly committed to Java in general and the OpenJDK community, and we see that every day. We cooperate with Oracle to evolve Java and continue to create the future roadmap alongside Oracle and many others. And so there's no question they are and continue to be very committed to Java. Their business practices, of course, are that's their business, and even though there's a declining use of their Oracle Java distribution, what we hear from analysts is that their revenue continues to grow quite impressively. So I think from a business perspective, they're generally happy with the business side of Java, and that's one of the reasons that they do continue to adjust the terms of how Oracle Java is licensed and the rules behind it, and they also continue to adjust the pricing. And at the end of the day, it is becoming more expensive for enterprises to continue to use Oracle Java. And the fact that enterprises have choice to either continue to pay more for using Oracle Java or pay less by moving to something based on OpenJDK. It's a free market, and enterprises have that choice. And to some degree, you could argue that everyone's winning. Oracle's winning because they continue to grow their revenue quite impressively, selling license and support for Oracle Java, and the OpenJDK community is winning because businesses like us are flourishing, and others too. So it seems like everyone is finding their way to be successful in the space, and that's ultimately a good thing for users and for users of Java and for the enterprises that use Java.
While customers can choose Oracle Java or some of these very, very mature alternatives, what are the clear benefits that they get when they migrate away from Oracle Java? And it's not just about pricing, it can also be about, as you said, no vendor locking in an open ecosystem.
I mean, certainly the fact that OpenJDK by nature is open source removes the vendor lock-in concern, and so that's certainly a major benefit. Another benefit is being able to choose a best-in-breed support partner, and because now you have choice of multiple OpenJDK distributions, it means that you can choose the distribution that meets your business needs. It means that you don't have to pay for the Java runtime if you don't want to, right? And that means that that's why actually we provide both free versions of the OpenJDK runtime as well as paid versions. And many customers, in fact, most of the community use free versions, and that's not a surprising statement when you look at open source technologies. Generally speaking, I think the kind of if there was a general rule of thumb, and this isn't true for just Java, it's true for most open source software in general. Anything that becomes quite popular and prevalent kind of levels out at say 75% of the use of that is free and not paying anyone, and 25% is the use of that is actually paying a commercial vendor to provide support for that. That's true in Linux. It's true in many other open source technologies, and so that's why companies like us, we really want to participate in both sides of it. We want to allow those users that don't want to pay anyone the best. We certainly will stand behind our freely available builds of OpenJDK, and with all humility, we think those are the best ones around and most reliable. And certainly, we've been providing free distributions of OpenJDK longer than anyone else. Longer than Amazon, longer than Eclipse, factually longer than anyone. And so we think our track record speaks for itself in terms of the best free distribution. But then, of course, we are a commercial company. We're in this business to make money, and so we also, with all humility, believe that we have the best commercial support for OpenJDK distributions as well. And so, long-winded answer to your question, but at the end of the day, the benefit for enterprises and developers that are moving to OpenJDK distribution is all about choice and being able to make the right business choice for their particular needs. And I think that's always a good thing for anyone who needs to make decisions on such an important layer of the overall application software stack.
And as customers move to any of these alternatives, including Azul, what kind of support they can expect? Because when they work with Oracle work closely with Java, so their teams know very well about Java. Because day one is easy, day two is challenging, integrating with their own environments, needing support, needing additional features. Can you talk about that aspect?
We did some questions on this in the survey as well, and we asked what enterprises value in customer support, and the things that came out of that are many of the things that you would expect, right? They feel the need for the technical expertise that a commercial vendor and commercial support provides. They need help when issues arise in terms of triaging failures. They need some amount of guarantee in terms of timely access to updates, right? Java, given its popularity, is also commonly one of the most attacked platforms in terms of the bad guys finding vulnerabilities and exploiting those vulnerabilities. And so guaranteed access to security updates is a really important aspect of why enterprises pay for commercial support for Java. Access to builds and features that were released a long time ago that might have been end of lifed by Oracle. So, for example, we still see over, I think it was somewhere between 10 and 15% of the respondents still use very old versions of Java, like Java 6 and Java 7. And so, amazingly, even though these technologies were released in I think it's 2006 timeframe or something, it's been around for a long time. It's still used in the enterprise, and so no other vendor other than Azul supports those older versions. Excuse me, those older versions. And I think when an enterprise is choosing a commercial support partner for Java, they're looking for one. They're not looking for, I'm going to use this build of Java for, my Java 21 applications, and I'm going to use this build for my Java 8. They're looking for one support partner that they trust that can provide a holistic set of builds and offerings and support for all of their Java applications. And when you look at any sort of reasonable sized enterprise, you're measuring the number of applications in hundreds, if not thousands. It's a lot of different versions of Java that needs to be supported, and they're looking for a support vendor that can handle all of those needs. And Oracle can do that. There's no question about it. So, Oracle's quality, their support, et cetera, is all very good. And so, it takes real engineering, real capabilities, real technical expertise to be able to match that. And Azul is frankly the best in the world in terms of being able to do that, but in a pure open source manner, and obviously a much more economically friendly manner.
Scott, thank you so much for joining me today, and of course talk about this report, this survey, and the options that are available to Oracle Java users. Thanks for those great insights, and as usual, I look forward to our next discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Swap. Appreciate your time. Looking forward to our next conversation.